Right foot creep.
Whether it be Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and in any manga bubble, you're likely to have seen discourse on who is the best shonen villain. Oftentimes, you'll hear Frieza be brought up, Pain, Aizen, that one ant guy, and even Shigaraki has garnered respect as a new age villain. But as these names echo throughout the community, the smaller voice of equally great villains gets lost into the void. I'm talking Hao Asakura, Light Yagami, Isabella, characters that have become the mascot for their respective series in terms of villainy. Now, this isn't to say that they are underrated, as these characters do get respect when talked about, but the issue is, we aren't talking about them enough. One man, Kazuki Takahashi, may he rest in peace, created a character I personally feel is underrepresented in the discussion of best shonen villains. That character is none other than the red wine sipping, red suit wearing, millennium eye having, cartoon loving Maximillion Pegasus. Although I love the concept of villains having a looming presence spanning a good majority of a series, something has to be said about villains that last only one arc but still manage to brand their image into the audience's hearts and minds. When I thought back on Yu-Gi-Oh's villains before I read it this year, I didn't think of Bakura first, I didn't think of Merrick first. The face that I saw was that of this man. But why? Both Bakura and Merrick were in the story for longer and individually committed more acts of villainy than Pegasus, but aren't as beloved. Well, for Bakura, I think what hurts him is that he arbitrarily decides when he'll be a villain. For a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh, he is laying dormant and only swooping in after a threat has already been dealt with. His overall presence as a villain is hindered by him always lurking in the background, making spotty appearances here and there. And as for Merrick, it's because he's black. Alright, for real, what hurts Merrick is that his threat as a villain was undermined by his lack of skill. I'm sorry, but someone needs to hear this. Merrick is one of the most Mickey Mouse Clubhouse villains the streets have to offer.
Hot dog! Hot dog!
He deadass should have lost every single match in the Battle City tournament. Mai mugged his ass for his Raw, but couldn't use it because she didn't know the secret code. Jonichi was a move away from beating him up, but got knocked out, so Merrick won by default. And of course, the MC beat Merrick because he's the MC. Pegasus, however, never had any of these issues. He stole the show every time he was on panel and properly established himself as a terrifying duelist. And before I go into all of his glory moments as a villain, let's first talk the roots of Pegasus, starting from the beginning. As history has proven, the greatest source of strength for men as well as their greatest weakness is a woman, and Pegasus was no exception. The love of his life, Cynthia, fell ill and died at age 17, which motivated Pegasus's future actions. Filled with grief after losing his first bad bitch and a strong desire to be reunited with his lover, Pegasus became obsessed with the concept of life after death, which led him to visit Egypt to sate his curiosity. There in Egypt, Pegasus didn't exactly find what he was looking for, but a new path had been created for him through the Millennium Eye. After Pegasus snooped around in the Valley of the Kings and witnessed a ritual that resulted in the death of a thief, he was discovered and given two choices: die right then and there, or live on as the bearer of the Millennium Eye. Either way, his fate was to be determined by whether or not the Eye deemed him worthy, and surprise surprise, Pegasus had the juice. Egypt also influenced Pegasus with the legends of how magicians in ancient times sealed spirits on stone tablets and used them in combat. This influence led to Pegasus creating a card game that modernized the legends he heard in Egypt, known to us as duel monsters. Now, What does this have to do with Cynthia? Fast forward a few years later and Pegasus is trying to take over Kaiba Corps. This is in the time that Seto Kaiba lost to Yugi and was left in a coma, who before his defeat created a means for dual monster cars to take on a lifelike projection. This is why we can physically see monsters during duels. Pegasus wanted that technology for himself to be able to create a lifelike projection of his love, Cynthia. We even discovered that he created a card based on the image of Cynthia. I know people today might not be too fond of Pegasus's motivation, probably thinking, oh, so you did all that for some cheeks? But I implore you, let's be mature and put this in context, even though it's sorta irrelevant. Yu-Gi-Oh came out in the 90s, so it preceded all the Obito hate and the general simp culture. But like I said, that's really unimportant. What matters is that Pegasus is a fleshed out character. We get a backstory for him that details his current motivation is born out of sorrow for his lover. We learn that the Millennium Eye was a catalyst for his descension into evil, as a lot of the items are, proven by Bakura and later Merrick. And we understand his agency in the story started as a domino effect of Yugi putting Kaiba in a coma. All that is to say, Pegasus has depth to his character, and for his role as a villain, the ball keeps rolling. Although there are a lot of factors to look at to determine if a villain is good or not, I personally think there's a quick method of appraisal. What I choose to look at is presence, effectiveness, and entertainment. P. As I continue, I'll explain what all of these elements are individually and why Pegasus checks the box for them, starting with presence. Presence in a story isn't easily discernible, but what it means is one's impact in the story. How do characters react to someone? Do they set the tone? What is their legacy beyond themselves as individuals? Even character design has a part in this as well. To further explain this, let's look at two villains in the same series with the purpose of differentiating what's a big presence and what's a small presence.
Full Metal Alchemist. Full Metal Alchemist.
Up to bat is Father, who has a low presence, which is why he's overshadowed by his own sins. Despite the power, despite his plotting, because Father is underground sitting in a damn chair for the majority of the series looking like a bum, he isn't too memorable. Yeah, he's the big bad, but he lacks activeness in the story as well as a buzz to his character. Scar is the exact opposite. He's personally touched so many plot lines, which included his history with Winry, the Ishvalan War, and Link to Alka history. As well, Scar is the constant topic of conversation, being a state alchemist killer who invoked fear in the military, and quite simply, he looks raw. Put Pegasus under the same microscope and he too is a villain with a big presence. In Duelist Kingdom, all eyes were on Pegasus, whether someone was on the island for money to save their loved one or for other nefarious acts. Pegasus was the ultimate focus as the guy to beat. And even if Pegasus wasn't the central antagonist, as the man who created the very card game being played, his legacy would forever be felt in the series as long as characters were dueling. In fact, you could say that his impact spreads to every iteration of Yu-Gi-Oh, like GX and 5Ds, because of him being a progenitor. Besides that, I think some of the more superficial qualities of Pegasus is why we the fans remember him so vividly. Pegasus gave off this suave image through his character design and polite manner of speech. He has long silver hair despite being like 24. Yeah, that kind of threw me for a loop. Look that up. This loud ass red suit on, and when you find him not dueling, he'll have a glass of red wine in his hand. Everything about him screams, I'm the boss of this show. And not to mention, he has an implanted golden left eye that'll make sure the image of him is gorilla glue into your head. Now, what about Pegasus' effectiveness as a villain? First and foremost, Pegasus was strong. And while that doesn't necessarily make you an effective villain, it helps you severely. I'd argue besides Atum and maybe Kaiba, Pegasus was the toughest opponent for Yugi. I need y'all to understand how ridiculous Pegasus was as a duelist because the man is a god. Number one, Pegasus is a genius. As I said before, Pegasus is the creator of this game, meaning he knows all cards in and out, knows strategy for cards, and counters against them. His duel against Bandit Keith is the perfect showcase of his brilliance. In this match, Pegasus is up against Bandit Keith, who is no pushover as the former United States champion. However, Pegasus doesn't duel unless a child named Tom, fresh off a mean diet of red crayons, play in his steed. Pegasus then gives the kid instructions on how to beat Keith, and it actually works. The cherry on top though is Pegasus uses the televised match of the kid beating a champion as a means to show the public anyone has a chance of winning, all in order to advertise his product. Number 2, the Millennium Eye. This artifact in the game of Duel Monsters is essentially a cheat code. With it, Pegasus can not only read your cards, but also your mind. Imagine a duel where you have to show your hand to your opponent at all times, plus you're telling them how you'll move too, and you can't lie. Unless your deck is completely unstoppable, or unless you have 2 souls and 1 body in you like Yugi, you and everyone else playing against Pegasus are finished. Game, set, and match. Lastly, number 3.
Welcome, Kaiba, to Toon World.
These monsters seem kinda unassuming at first, but are broken beyond belief, sorta like Pegasus. With the ability to attack an opponent's life directly, they can bypass all defense, and they can dodge attacks or hide into the Book of Toon World to bypass opponents' attacks. These 3 components of Pegasus proves that he is not to be fucked with in the game of Duel Monsters. But again, being strong doesn't mean that a character is effective. I judge this on wins, a character's progression to their ambitions, and how much they push the MC or cast. And with the last one alone, Pegasus was a dog. Let's look at the highlight reel. In the beginning chapters, Pegasus sends a tape to Yugi that he uses to challenge him to a shadow duel. During the battle, Pegasus is predicting Yugi's moves again on a pre-recorded tape at that, and ends up beating Yugi and snatching the soul of his grandfather. Pegasus then takes the soul of Seto Kaiba's little brother Makuba and turns him into a mind-broken butler, which Pegasus then uses Makuba as a psychological advantage over Seto, beats Seto, and traps another soul in a card. Bandit Keith confronts Pegasus after losing to Jonichi and demands the prize money at knife point. However, Pegasus invokes the penalty game on Keith and forces him to shoot himself in the head, killing him. Pegasus lost the big match against Yugi, of course, but he was looking unstoppable as a villain before then. And I'ma keep it real, Pegasus should not have even lost that duel. Yugi played a card he's never even played before or talked about until that duel, which you have to remember, all the duelists invited by Pegasus already had their decks created before they reached the island. So where the fuck did Magician of Black Chaos come from? I don't know. And then some way, somehow, Yugi's friends Bakura, Honda, Azu, and Jonichi blocked Pegasus's mind scan. It was the definition of the power of friendship, and that is what it took to get Pegasus out of the paint.
This is bullshit.
Besides that though, disregarding the simplicity of a win or a loss, Pegasus was effective because he became the catalyst for Atum to start trusting Yugi as a duelist. One of the core themes of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is finding and believing in oneself. And throughout the story, it becomes clear this isn't just a journey for Yugi to get Atum's memories back, but to also gain self-confidence. Pegasus played a huge role in this as the antagonist because there was no way to defeat him without coordination and trust between Atum and Yugi. No longer could Yugi hide and let Atum take over a match, he had to pull his own weight, and Atum had to have faith in him to do that, all thanks to Pegasus. Lastly, and this is the most subjective unit of measure, but Pegasus is mighty entertaining. Anytime Pegasus was on screen, I was having fun. Why? Because it was going to be a show. Either Pegasus was going to whoop someone's ass or be the funniest character on screen, or probably both. The all business image he has contrasting with his sarcastic playfulness was a pair made in heaven. Pegasus would be in a duel knowing damn well he has it in the bag, but would pretend to be shocked or in awe of his opponent's moves, and his dramatic cries of worry sold the whole comedic bit, along with something else I wouldn't normally talk about: his English voice actor, Darren Dunstan. English does get a bad rep to this day, and 4Kids is one of the perpetrators, but Darren was the anomaly. If you watch Yu-Gi-Oh as a child in America, everyone remembers the iconic Yugi boy or Kaiba boy.
My turn, Yugi boy. I'm sorry, Kaiba boy, but I knew you would, Yugi boy. Now you see how feeble your skills truly are, Kaiba boy. Whatever you say, Yugi boy. Yugi boy, Yugi boy. Yugi boy.
That may not seem like it's worth talking about, but it's one of the aspects of his character that stick with many people like myself. It's like Naruto's Believe It or Team Rocket's Blasting Off Again. If you don't remember anything about these characters, you'll at least remember this. And like I said, it's just a humorous part of his character and oddly lines up with his adult exterior and hides a childish soul. He is legit a troll, and that does nothing but add on to the entertainment factor of Pegasus's character, cause call him what you want, but boring cannot be used to describe him. That about sums up everything I wanted to say about Pegasus. As one of the most memorable villains from my childhood, I felt like I had to do his character justice by reminding people of his impact. So hopefully I hit the mark and this video resonated with some people. Because while Pegasus isn't the deepest or most popular villain, he deserves major respect. So when you fix your mouth to talk about great shonen villains, mention Maximillion J. Pegasus. I am Satsuki the Savage People, and I am out.
Life is just death, taking its time. Who gon' take it from my hand? Was lonely before friends. I'm holding my own hand and taking these bad shots, just hoping they go in. Everything folds in.